Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start with a quick lunchtime pit stop that turned into a showdown at the McDonald's drive-thru. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. The DriveThru Debacle, a lesson in refund reality. I was racing between things one day and didn't have much time for lunch. At the time, McDonald's wasn't absurdly expensive, and one was on the way to my next stop, so I decided to hit the drive-thru up so I could eat on the way. I placed my order for a medium McThing and got asked if I wanted a large, which most McDonald's don't do anymore, and I said no. When I got to the window to pay, the price seemed high, which I thought was odd, but maybe I just did the mental math on the taxes wrong or misremembered the price of the item. And then the cashier didn't hand me a receipt. Weird as well, but whatever. When I got to the window to receive my food, it all clicked as they handed me a large, which I politely declined as I really had zero interest in paying $2 for a few more fries and soda. At this point, the manager appeared and stated, "We don't do refunds here." That was when I realized what was going on. Having worked fast food before, they were probably doing some sort of upcharge competition. Ring up the most larges and you/that manager get a reward. I was slightly flabbergasted, but the manager repeated that nope, no possibility of a refund. I politely smiled and said, "That's okay, I'll call my bank on speaker to do a chargeback. I'll need you to talk to them." Since it's on speaker, you can just tell them you can't do refunds, and then proceeded to sit at the window calling my bank during lunch hour at a very busy drive-thru. Turns out they can do refunds, and they can do them so fast I didn't even make it through the phone tree. And yes, I did file a complaint with corporate, but it's not like that actually does anything. The move to call the bank on speaker right there in the drive-thru during lunch rush? Absolutely brilliant. You could almost see the managers sweating bullets as they realized their upcharge competition scheme wasn't going to fly this time. And surprise, suddenly refunds are magically possible when the pressure's on. And our second story. Bell Wars, entitled cashier versus safety protocol. First, a little background. I work at an indoor pool, and we have an attraction that we run every 30 minutes. Due to the attraction being potentially dangerous, especially to elderly people, we have a PA system in place to ring a bell in the hall as a warning. Once the bell rings, our guests have 2 minutes to get to safety or leave the pool while we lower the water level. Now, the building's old. The speaker system is an old 100-volt system, and the original amplifier for it is long gone, so things are wired up a little hacky with the new modern amplifier. This means every room in the building has its own channel we can turn on or off, but all are fed from the same input. Our boss isn't a monster and knows things can get boring or exhausting depending on the season, so they added a small web radio to the PA system so we can have radio. And because we're all nice and friendly, we can also turn on the audio channel for the entrance so the cashiers can have some music as well. The only problem here is, though, that volume can vary a lot due to the way the system works. One zone has 15 speakers, while another zone only has 3, but the amp sends the same voltage to both zones. So one zone will have normal audio and the next will be too loud. I think you can see where this is going. Now, that day the swim hall was full. People were noisy, and therefore we had to put up the volume for the bell to be audible to our guests, literally what the system was meant for. Fortunately, though, volume was fine for our little booth, so we had the correct volume for the hall and could still enjoy some music. Along comes EC, entitled cashier. She comes into our booth, complains that she's bored, and turns on the channel for the entrance. We had that one turned off because the entrance has probably the least amount of speakers, so the radio would be quite loud there. So we slightly lowered the overall master volume to accommodate for it. Unfortunately, at this point, the radio is non-audible in our booth because the volume's so low. So when we rang the bell over the PA, we noticed you couldn't hear it in the swim hall at all, so we had to increase the volume and left it at that higher level. After the attraction ran, we were back in our booth. In comes EC and complains the radio is way too loud and goes to our PA system to lower the volume. Now, I want to mention I'm only 26 years old and she's in her 60s. But considering the hierarchy, I'm the one in control of the PA system since it's safety-relevant equipment for the pool, not entertainment, and I do take that safety equipment seriously. After we had elderly people drown because they didn't hear the bell. It's already too quiet, especially in here. You can't lower it further, I say, to nail down that the volume is, in fact, pretty low already and that I don't want it to be lower. So what? You have phones. You can make radio yourself, she says with that smug face, which pissed me off. In our little booth, there's no Wi-Fi and we have no mobile data signal at all. Meanwhile, the entrance hall has a public Wi-Fi access point that she always uses to watch TikTok videos. We can also turn off the channel. You have a phone too. You can make your own radio as well, I say. She looks at me, pissed, and storms off. Later that day, EC went to my boss and complained that I refused to let her have music. My boss then reminded her that the company is not paying the royalty licenses to play radio in public, so she wasn't allowed to have radio in the entrance in the first place. Though we handle this pretty easy usually, since nobody's gonna realistically file a lawsuit over it unless it's too loud. EC recently, though, started pulling the same crap, coming into our booth and lowering the volume repeatedly while we aren't there. We noticed after we rang the bell repeatedly and every time had to increase the volume. Boss reminded EC the other day that the license for playing radio in public is about $2,400, which the company will have to pay as she is the one that turned it on. EC is highly entitled and considers herself to be higher in the hierarchy than me due to being in the company longer. That may be true, but the PA system is still not for entertainment purposes. It's my responsibility, and I'm not going to break the amplifier by increasing and decreasing volume over and over just because she's bored and can't be bothered to use her own phone. Wave pools are incredibly fun, but you need to be a good swimmer. Even then, it only takes 1 second to get overwhelmed and accidentally swallow water. Trying to cough and remain above water is extremely difficult. What do you think, guys? Ever had someone pull rank for all the wrong reasons? Share your stories. I bet OP's not the only one dealing with this kind of nonsense. And our next story. You're not selling to me because I stole? No, that's not correct at all. So I work in a store that has a lot of thefts. Calling security is never an option because they take 10 minutes to arrive, even when there was a fight at the registers that ended up requiring the police and multiple ambulances. Because of this, people get away with a lot of things, to the point there's a recurring customer who's stolen more than he's ever bought. This isn't that customer, but the other week I was serving a customer who asked to take cash off his EFT POS card. Not a big deal, but it failed so many times he said to just cancel the order and just walked out while I canceled the cash out order. That's when I realized that he also took out the entirety of his cart, about $50 worth of deli meat. I, of course, knew I was going to get written up and just mark it as a loss. At least we know what he took. A few hours later, he came through again, his order at $400 now, full of lots of premium silverware, cosmetics, and the like, plus he wanted cash out on the same card as before. I said sure and put his groceries on my other side so he wasn't in arm's reach of any of it before setting up for cash out. Instead of using his card, he immediately asked why I moved the bags and told him that I was looking to clean the area while he finished his purchase. A lie, but I couldn't tell him I suspected he was a thief. I didn't even mention the previous shop, but he immediately started yelling for me to give him his bags and that I was refusing to sell to him because he stole earlier. I hadn't mentioned it at all. It took a few minutes for the manager to arrive, taking over the man's shop. Turns out his card still didn't work, and with a huff, he just left. So 2 write-ups that day, one for a $50 loss, the other for suspecting a thief, but I got praised by loss preventions, so it was a roller coaster of a day. That's society today, and they wonder why no one wants to work these types of jobs anymore. And our last story. Karen's pool hustle. I, 38-year-old female, live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in a gated community with about 40 homes. It's the kind of neighborhood where you get to know who lives where and who their regular guests are. We also have a small recreation center with a gym, outdoor games, a hangout area, and a pool. The fees for it come out of our monthly HOA dues. My house is right next to the rec center, so my backyard's essentially attached to it, and I can see everyone who uses the pool area. Over the last 2 months, I've noticed a surge of random people, big groups of strangers and families showing up to the pool. They stay for hours on weekends, blasting music until 1 to 2 a.m. with screaming kids running everywhere. They leave trash scattered around and never clean up after themselves. I tried to ignore it, but last weekend was the final straw. I have a trampoline in my backyard for my kids, and I let my dog out to play while I was doing some chores. Suddenly, I hear a commotion and looked out to see kids I didn't recognize jumping on the trampoline. These random kids, dripping wet from the pool, were feeding my dog chips and snacks. I was horrified. They could have made him sick, or worse, one of them could have slipped and hurt themselves. I didn't want any liability falling back on me. I stormed out and went straight to the rec center to find their parents. Me. Excuse me, whose kids are in my backyard right now? Random parent. Oh, they're just having fun. It's harmless. Me. It's not harmless. That's private property. Who invited you here? Parent. Karen did. Turns out Karen, 30s female who lives down the street's been advertising our rec center on Facebook Marketplace, renting it out to random families and tourists staying in nearby hotels. Apparently, she's been charging them for access to the pool and outdoor amenities, even though these are supposed to be for residents only. I confronted Karen directly. Me. Karen, what the hell are you doing? You're renting out the rec center to strangers? This is against HOA rules. Karen. Oh, calm down, OP. These families wouldn't have access to a nice pool otherwise. You should be glad I'm helping people. Me. Helping them? You're letting random strangers trash our community spaces, keep us up all night, and now their kids are trespassing in my yard. This is completely unacceptable. Karen. You're overreacting. They're just kids. And it's not like you're even using the pool right now. Why does it matter? When Karen refused to take down her ads or stop inviting strangers, I teamed up with other residents to call security. Security arrived and asked all her guests to leave, much to Karen's fury. The HOA then slapped her with massive fines for violating the guest policies. Karen, of course, wasn't happy. She called me and the other neighbors who complained elitist snobs. Karen, you people are unbelievable. These families are just trying to have fun. Not everyone can afford a house in this neighborhood, you know. Me. This has nothing to do with being elitist. You're breaking the rules and putting us all at risk. What happens if someone gets hurt or if these strangers cause damage? You're the one who's out of line here. Karen, you're all just selfish and uptight. It's a pool, for crying out loud. What's the big deal? While most of the community sided with us, a few families thought we should have just let it slide. Personally, I'm glad we took action. The rec center's for residents, not for Karen to make a quick buck off strangers. As for Karen, she's still salty and refuses to take any responsibility, but at least her little side hustle's officially shut down. Honestly, she should be drummed out of the community simply for opening them to such a potential liability problem. What she was doing could have been disastrous on many levels. Who moves to an HOA and pays dues there just to potentially destroy it, not because of dumb overregulation, but because she wants to side hustle a little extra money? What she was making probably hardly exceeded his HOA dues. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.